What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. First and foremost, man, y'all know the drill. Hit the subscribe button, hit the post notification bell, hit the like button so you'll know whenever I put out any new content, post anything, what's going on over here, man. Obviously, the past few days, I really haven't been active. I haven't posted. I think the last time I posted was like Sunday or something. Obviously, apologize. Some things really came up, but in these past 4 or 5 days, I think it's pretty safe to say that some things have been circulating. Some things have, definitely been making their rounds with the Atlanta Falcons and the quarterback position. And obviously, the quarterback position for the Atlanta Falcons has been in question now for months. It just feels like, we've been playing the waiting game. We've went through, many stages of, who is going to be the next quarterback for the Falcons. At one point, it seemed like Justin Fields to the Falcons was an inevitability. Obviously, I made a whole video talking about that. Could the Falcons trade up in the draft for a quarterback? But the name these past 4 or 5 days that has really came into conversation that you're really hearing is Kirk Cousins, the current quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings. Also played with the Washington Redskins when they were still the Redskins. And that has been the name that for, many different reasons we've been hearing has been talked about as being potentially the next quarterback of the Atlanta Falcons. So in this one, man, what we're going to be doing, we're going to be breaking down everything, of what Kirk Cousins to Atlanta could mean. Could it actually happen? What could the contract look like? What could some ramifications be? Without further ado, man, let's get right into it. Starting off, we're going to look at what Kirk Cousins has done so far in his NFL career. Kirk Cousins has been an NFL quarterback for 12 seasons. He hasn't been starting all 12 seasons. Kirk Cousins started off, he was drafted by the Washington Redskins in 2012 with a 4th-round pick to be RG3's backup. That's what they drafted him to be. RG3 was going to be the answer in Washington. But his second and third year, RG3, dealt with many lingering injuries, and that led to Kirk Cousins coming into play for Washington off and on those first few seasons. And then finally, his 4th season, Kirk would become the full-time starter. And in his first full season starting, Kirk led Washington to a division title. He led them to a division title, led them to a home playoff game. And I can't necessarily remember who they faced. I know they lost. I can't remember who they faced in the playoffs that year. I'm trying to think. I don't think it was the Packers, because I think that was the year that, they lost versus the Cardinals. Or it was the Packers, actually. It was the Packers. I guess I thought that was wild card. That was actually the divisional round where the Packers and Cardinals faced off. So they did lose to the Packers that year in the playoffs. But anyways, after that, Kirk and Minnesota could not reach an agreement on a long-term deal for Kirk to stay in Washington. Kirk got franchise tagged twice. Everyone knows what happened. He hit the open market. And in 2018, Kirk Cousins signed with the Minnesota Vikings, a fully guaranteed 3-year deal. That really was criticized a lot at the time. But his second year in Minnesota, he led them to the playoffs. Led them to a playoff win down in New Orleans versus the Aints, which, obviously would love to see, as Falcons fans. And Kirk really has made a name for himself in Minnesota since then. We have seen, some of his better years since he's gone to Minnesota. He's played with, many great talents, that the Minnesota Vikings have had, especially with that offense. And now Kirk is in a very similar situation that he was in when he left Washington. But Kirk is 35 years old currently. He will be turning 36 before the start of the regular season. Kirk is, I believe he's turning 36 in August. So that's right before the start of the regular season. He has 3 playoff appearances in 3 seasons. Or he has playoff appearances in 3 seasons of his career. He's gone 1-3 in his playoff career. Obviously, the lone one coming versus the Aints, down in the swamp in the 2019 season. And in his career, he has accumulated over 40,000 passing yards with a 66.9 completion percentage, 275 touchdowns, and 110 interceptions over the course of his career as a quarterback. Now, one of the big things that we need to keep in mind when talking about this whole Kirk Cousins to Atlanta talk is the fact that there is some interest, from the Kirk Cousins side of things to Atlanta. There are ties there. Kirk's wife was born and raised in Alpharetta. If y'all don't know what Alpharetta is, I'm sure all my ATLians know where Alpharetta is and all that. But if you don't, Alpharetta is a northern suburb of Atlanta. It's on the north side. It is a very nice area. It's actually where they want to put a potential hockey team coming to Atlanta. That's been a talk as of recently. They want to put it up in that area in Alpharetta. That's where Kirk's wife grew up. She was born and raised in the metro Atlanta area, so their ties are definitely there. Before, obviously, she met Kirk, but still she grew up there. And another thing to keep in mind is this. Kirk and his wife, I can't remember if they had 2 or 3 kids watching, that quarterback documentary that Kirk was in. We found out a lot about who Kirk was as a dad and how he approached the game, who he was as a husband. And one of the things that I really have to say is watching Kirk on that documentary with Patrick Mahomes and obviously the other guy who actually played quarterback for the Falcons a couple years ago, is you saw that Kirk, obviously, he was a true family man. He cared a lot about his family. And, I would definitely think that, he lives by, happy wife, happy life. And then, she probably, would want to come home. She probably would definitely, listen, as those kids, I believe they were pretty young. They're getting ready to start grade school if they haven't already. You want to get them down here in the school system, get them accustomed to everything. And another thing you have to keep in mind with Kirk, that Kirk and his family are going to think about with where he decides to play next. It's not just going to be, okay, where am I going to go play for the final 3 or 4 years of my career? It's going to be, where can I retire at? Where can I settle down? Where can my kids graduate high school from? And I find it very hard to believe Kirk isn't going to do that somewhere he doesn't have familiarity with. That could be Minnesota. Maybe Kirk makes a potential return to Washington, even though I don't really see that. Or, Kirk, let's, the wife kind of, take the steering wheel. Obviously, she knows the Alpharetta area very well growing up in it. And that is where they decide to put their boys in school, and that's where they decide to, raise their family at, and where Kirk decides to play out his final years at in Atlanta. And obviously this stems from reports that Kirk has been looking at houses. He's been house hunting, in the Atlanta area. More specifically, you'd have to assume the Alpharetta area, the Johns Creek area. Speaking of Johns Creek, Wes Durham, the voice of the Atlanta Falcons, went on radio. Radio in Minnesota. I don't remember the station or if but I know I saw this, and he reported that Kirk Cousins has actually joined a country club up in Johns Creek. So yeah, you can definitely take that as you want. Obviously, Johns Creek, Alpharetta, that's a very nice area. And obviously a lot of country clubs up there. And we know Kirk Cousins, with all the money he's made in his career, he can definitely afford a nice country club or two. So I think, that has to be considered when looking at, this entire situation. Kirk has shown much interest in, the Atlanta area, and you would have to assume that that's going to sway part of the decision. And also when looking at it, the Falcons' offensive situation, it can really be said it is ideal for a quarterback like Kirk Cousins. It is fit for a veteran quarterback to come in and take the keys and really steer this ship. That, what Zach Robinson is going to want to do, looking at the rest of the Falcons offense, you're going to want to get a veteran like Kirk Cousins in here to be that quarterback. And looking at the, potential good side of bringing Kirk Cousins in, obviously not projecting too much of what could be, what results are, or anything like that, but just looking at what we already know. Kirk has been proven to be one of the more consistent quarterbacks in the NFL today with his play and his play style. And what you're getting out of Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins, is the passing quarterback. He's going to sling the rock around. He's an efficient passer. He is a very good passer of the football, has been, and he's really gotten better throughout his career passing the football. And when looking at that quarterback, that can be seen as the viable option to work with a room of young position talents like Kyle Pitts, like Drake London, like Bijan Robinson, giving them that guidance. He's going to understand getting these guys involved with the football. He's going to understand, where the ball needs to go. Another good thing about Kirk Cousins, he's going to get rid of that ball quickly. The release is like that. It comes quick. So Kirk Cousins is going to get rid of the football quickly. And especially, man, when I look at a Drake London and what bringing Kirk Cousins in could do for him. Drake London, to me, has been that guy that we have seen for his first 2 years. He has the potential, and it feels like he's been waiting to explode, but obviously the quarterback situation hasn't been ideal. You get a Kirk Cousins in here, and look at what Kirk Cousins did in Minnesota with Justin Jefferson. Obviously, Justin Jefferson is an extraordinary talent, and JJ and Drake are two completely different styles of wide receiver and what they are. But still, Justin Jefferson is arguably the best receiver in football today. And one of the big reasons Minnesota is in this situation is because Justin Jefferson is getting ready to break the bank. He wants worth like $30 million a year, and he's the best receiver in football. Many would argue he has every right, to think that, to demand that out of whatever team is going to pay him that. It just doesn't seem like Minnesota's going to be able to keep both of them at this point. Obviously, anything can change, but that's what led us to this situation. It doesn't look like Minnesota's going to be able to manage that situation where they can keep both of them. So you get a Kirk Cousins in here and you pair him with a Drake London. I think that allows Drake London to take that step into that stratosphere of potentially being a top wide receiver in the NFL. We know Drake London is very Mike Evans like. He is going to make the effort for the football. We already know that. He is a stretch the field guy. He is, on point with the catch radius. It really feels like Kirk Cousins could be the one to help elevate Drake London and Kyle Pitts as well. Kyle Pitts, when Matt Ryan was still the quarterback, which Matt Ryan and Kirk Cousins are, basically the same style quarterback. I would maybe even say, kind of twins, at the quarterback position. They both play a very familiar style of play at the quarterback position. And obviously we know how Matt Ryan played, and Kirk Cousins plays that same way. And when we saw Kyle Pitts with a stable quarterback like Matt Ryan, who knew what he was doing, that's when we saw Kyle Pitts go for 1,000 yards. And Kyle Pitts coming back from injury, you would think that if you pair him with a Kirk Cousins and knowing what Kirk Cousins can do, that can allow Kyle Pitts to finally unlock his potential. Bijan Robinson, another guy as well. Even though he's running back, we know Bijan has great pass catching ability. Kirk Cousins could polish him up on stuff like that. I really feel like for a lot of these young, position guys, even though it would be very exciting to see a young quarterback like potentially drafting one, trading up, which I have been an advocate for in the past. Still, you look at it at the end of the day, a Kirk Cousins can make more sense because he can help polish those guys up in areas that, still need the polishing, still need, the guidance along the way. As Kirk is a very consistent 4,000-yard passer, and he has gotten better passing the ball as his career goes on, man. It has been said, Kirk Cousins, he can make any throw on that football field. Now, all of this, granted, is pre-Achilles, and we're going to talk about that in a second. But still, it's been said Kirk Cousins can make any throw on the football field. And that at the end of the day, he can get the ball to his playmakers. He has very quick release. And also, man, Kirk has a good personality. We watched that quarterback documentary. And we saw, man, Kirk, he seems like a likable guy. Now some of the things like, completely taking Tuesdays off to go to, Barnes and Noble, it's kind of, I think you need to put in some work. But at the same time, man, Kirk, and you can tell he's a guy of great gratitude. He's a great father. He's a great husband. He's a good personality guy in what he's going to bring to this locker room. But there is another side of that, and it's the side that's very concerning, and it's the side that really shakes me and really kind of, I really don't know about this. And the number one thing, Kirk Cousins is coming off a torn Achilles, ladies and gentlemen. And he was having the best season of his career up to the point, but he's coming off a torn Achilles. And this is his first major injury, and he's entering his age 36 season, his first time going through rehab. And we don't know how that Achilles is going to turn out. And obviously with a guy like Kirk, who it seems like he takes care of himself. It seems like, he stays in high spirits, but still Kirk Cousins is, the type of guy that, you really don't know, especially with the age, how that Achilles is going to hold up, especially with him, being in his late 30s, on the wrong side of 35, going into age 36. And that is a very big concern when you look at this situation, because that there is a lot to be considered, when going and doing this search. And if you do go and get Kirk Cousins, is he going to be the same quarterback that he was pre-Achilles? You would definitely hope he is, but you don't know. And listen, only having one playoff win in his career for a guy that, let's make it very clear, if Kirk Cousins comes here, the Atlanta Falcons in 2024 are in win-now mode. The Falcons are going to look to get to the playoffs and look to make a run in the playoffs. And for a guy who only has one playoff win in his entire career versus the Aints, by the way, I mean, it's versus the Aints, so Aints fans, know your rules, shut your mouth, don't you say a damn word. But that is very concerning that he only has one playoff win in his career. And Kirk, he has that reputation of letting down in those big spots, of letting down when the lights shine the brightest in primetime. Now, Kirk Cousins' primetime record, it isn't as bad as some may exaggerate, but still, it's not the most impressive when looking at it. I think it's like, 12 and 20 overall? That is really not. That's almost a 1 out of 3, prime time, and listen, you have to be able to win in prime time. That's what the playoffs are. The playoffs are more times than not prime time games. Only having one playoff win in your career, that's concerning, man. It really is. Now, at the same time, you can't read too much into that stuff, but still, that has to be concerning for a guy, you talk about not just coming off the Achilles. He really, does not have the winning experience. Kirk Cousins, it can almost be said, is Matt Ryan without all of Matt Ryan's accolades. Matt Ryan, won the MVP. Matt Ryan went to the Super Bowl. Matt Ryan, had other playoff wins in his career. Kirk Cousins only has one playoff win in his entire career. And at the end of the day, for a guy you're bringing in that you're hoping can lead you to the ultimate promised land in 2 or 3 years, I really don't know. And then you're talking about he's going to be 36 this year. He'll be 37 next year. That regression is coming sooner rather than later. Not everyone is Tom Brady. And then there's the other big question. He is obviously not going to be a long-term answer. Kirk Cousins probably plays 3, maybe 4 more years, and he's going to hang it up. And then that leaves you with the question, then where do you go? Now, this isn't too much of a concern because bringing in Kirk Cousins puts the Falcons in win-now mode. I've already said it. It puts you in win-now mode. And I think ultimately, if you bring in Kirk Cousins, that's going to be following the model of the 2021 LA Rams, which Raheem Morris was a part of as defensive coordinator. Zach Robinson was a part of. And a lot of that philosophy is coming over here. A lot of that Rams philosophy. And they went all in to win their Super Bowl. But the only thing is, the Rams, they had the team set in place. They had the pieces to go and make the Super Bowl run. They had the Aaron Donalds. They had the wide receiver room. They had all of that. They had the important components in place. All they needed was a quarterback that could take them to the next level, which they found in Matthew Stafford, who really never had any justice in Detroit. In his first year coming there, they won the Super Bowl. The Atlanta Falcons quarterback, while it is the biggest problem, it's not the only problem. The Falcons have needed that premier guy to get to the quarterback since John Abraham. We had it for 1 season with Vic Beasley, but we needed it on a consistent basis since John Abraham left the team. And you have to have that dominant edge rusher along with the quarterback. And the Falcons have to completely rebuild the wide receiver room as well behind Drake London. You got to get a wide receiver 2 in here. It's been proven. You have to have capable receivers in the NFL to win the big one. Look at the Chiefs. And listen, it's not a group full of superstars. Obviously, Travis Kelce is there. Look, Rashee Rice was a 2nd-round pick. Mecole Hardman, he's not the shiniest guy, but, in the end, he can get the job done if you need him to get it done. Valdez-Scantling, he's not the shiniest guy, but if you need a job done, more times than not, he can get it done. So you don't need superstars, but you still need to address those positions. And the salary cap prices and the markets for all these positions continue to go up. So it's not just quarterback, it's these other positions as well, even though quarterback is the big one. If the Falcons had better quarterback play last year, we know we would be in the playoffs. But still, that you bringing in Kirk Cousins is not just, let's just try to build something. No, you're literally trying to go all in to win a Super Bowl in the next 2 or 3 years. And this upcoming year, you need to get to the playoffs, and you need to show the capability to make a damn run. And then, the other big concern that, I'm going to talk about right now. What could a potential contract for Kirk Cousins look like? The big concern for me, the biggest concern for me with Kirk Cousins is the money that he could ask for. Now, listen, obviously you got to pay to win in the NFL. You got to go spend the money, and I understand that. But you also have to pay guys what they are really worth. And I'm going to go ahead and say it. I don't think Kirk Cousins is worth $50 million. He's not worth it. And especially on a fully guaranteed deal. You have to keep in mind what the Atlanta Falcons just came out of. Salary cap hell. We just came out of salary cap hell. Where, it was Matt Ryan's bad contract. It was Julio. You had a lot of bad contracts. And the Falcons are in a good state, with their salary cap right now. But just because you have a lot of money, that you can potentially play around with, you can't just go around throwing around contracts to anyone. You can't go and overpay a Kirk Cousins. It cannot happen. You have to pay a Kirk Cousins what he is worth. Now, there's many different ways to structure a contract as well. The one thing I'm not doing with Kirk Cousins, I'm not giving him a fully guaranteed contract. I'm not pulling a Cleveland Browns like they did with Deshaun Watson and giving him a fully guaranteed $50 million a year contract. And there are certain ways you can structure it. Like, Kirk Cousins, he could be paid, the contract could be $40 million a year, but especially for those early years, there could be, only like say a $15 million cap hit. There could only for the first few years, and then you spread it out. I would probably anticipate Kirk Cousins is getting a 3-year deal. It cannot be fully guaranteed, is the way I see it. I think how you do this thing, and personally, if you are asking me, I would say for Kirk Cousins and keeping everything in mind, I would say $35 million a year is about fair. Now, Kirk is no doubt going to be pushed to pay more than $35 million a year at this rate, especially with where the quarterback market is. So ultimately, you have to look at it from the perspective of you have to do it smart and you have to do it the right way. You can't just go and put yourself in salary cap hell again. You have to be able to spread this contract out, and you cannot overpay this man. I say 3 years, $105 million. That's what I'm doing. And another thing too, if Kirk Cousins really wants to come to Atlanta, he'll take the hometown discount on behalf of his wife. If she really wants to be here, he's okay with being here. We'll take the hometown discount. It ain't like money's a big concern, but at the same time, listen, you can't blame the man for wanting to get paid, but also you can't just be throwing money around everywhere. And that's my big concern. So ultimately, what I'm going to ask Terry Fontenot, what I'm going to ask the Falcons front office, Raheem Morris, Arthur Blank, all these guys, if you bring this man in, you bring Kirk Cousins in, I will be on board just like I would be on board with any of these quarterbacks. However, you have to do it the smart way, especially with how you structure his contract. because the last thing we can really afford to go into a salary cap hell, at least for right now. You have to be able to build a team to win right now. Now, if the Falcons win a Super Bowl, with Kirk Cousins in, say, 2 years, and then you go and we have some salary cap problems, okay, that's one thing to live with. But at the same time, this guy only has one playoff win in his career. There's nothing really guaranteed. So ultimately, there is a lot of factors to keep in mind. But overall, what are my final thoughts? I'm going to go ahead and say this as I close out. Kirk Cousins has, no doubt is one of the more consistent quarterbacks in the NFL. You know what you're getting out of Kirk. I would welcome Kirk here, but as I say, there are your concerns. The injury concern, how does he come back from the Achilles? And my biggest thing is you can't just throw money at this guy. You cannot give this guy $50 million a year. It just cannot happen because you have to fill those other holes on your roster as well. At least for right now, you have to make it to where the Falcons are going to be able to build a team for the next few years and give yourself the best chance to compete. That's what you're going to have to do if Kirk comes here. But ultimately, had been going well over 30 minutes. If you stayed with me throughout, appreciate you. Y'all know what to do, man. I will be probably putting another video out tomorrow, and I don't know what it's going to be. I really don't, because I feel like we need to talk about some of these other guys that could potentially be free agents that you have to look at, from an edge rusher perspective, wide receivers. The Falcons may be adding to the secondary, just adding depth in general. It's very important to think about all these positions, not just quarterback. But anyways, with that being said, appreciate you guys for watching. As I say, hit the subscribe button, hit the post notification bell, hit the like button, and I will see you all in the next one.